We have the latest Montreal Canadiens GM rumors to talk about today, plus some more trade rumors involving players from the Habs, as well as the Florida Panthers and the Seattle Kraken. We also have more news from the NHL waiver wire, some injury updates, and another suspension. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss today. First up, let's start with the news on the NHL waiver wire. We have Alex Stalock, goaltender for the Oilers, is on waivers today. This is to kind of get him kind of further along with his comeback. Alex Stalock hasn't played a hockey game in I think about a year and a half. He had complications with myocarditis and has been out for quite some time. So this is kind of required for him to be able to get back and be able to play. So we'll see. I mean, Alex Stalock still has 1 year left on his contract. It's the final year. It's $750,000. So certainly, a pretty fair deal for a guy who can play. I mean, he actually has had his moments as a decent backup goalie in the past. So we'll see where this goes. I would imagine he probably isn't claimed considering how long it's been since he's played a hockey game. But I guess we'll find out. And either way, regardless if he stays in the Oilers organization or ends up elsewhere, at least he's be able to make the comeback, and we certainly wish him well to complete his return. Now, another injury update. This is actually kind of an odd scenario, but last night between the Flames and the Senators in warm-up, we had a situation where the Senators had a shot go off the crossbar during warm-up, which I believe was taken by Thomas Chabot, and it hit Connor Brown in the face. He immediately went off the ice, but he played. He seemed okay. He had a good night, scored a goal, had an assist, had a really solid game. But after the game, discovered he has a broken jaw. So the puck obviously got him in just the right spot. Sometimes when it comes to the jaw, you can certainly have fractures or issues there without even fully realizing it immediately. So this is kind of like just an odd scenario where the injury happened in warm-up. He played, didn't know it, and discovered it later. I would imagine by the end of the game, he must have been having some pain and discomfort and something, and get it checked out further. And so he is actually going to be out for a little while. Thankfully, when it comes to these types of injuries, players can come back with extra protective measures between their face shield and different things they can wear. So I'm not sure exactly how long he's going to be out. Kind of one of those things where it's probably a little too early to tell, but still kind of an odd scenario that unfolded last night, resulting in a fairly serious injury. We also had a fine announced today as well. Calvin Haan of the Blackhawks has been fined for a dangerous trip against Cole Caulfield, which happened in a game against Montreal Canadiens last night. To me, it didn't really look that bad, but he was classified as a dangerous trip. I know there was a major, I guess controversial to a degree, offside call that a lot of fans were saying that the play was offside, but it was deemed onside. It was the overtime winning goal. It was completely onside with the rule. But I know the rule's been updated over the years, and obviously some people don't quite understand it. I've even seen some Sportsnet analysts for covering Montreal, even online on Twitter, saying that they didn't think there was any way it was onside. But anyways, it was kind of an odd ending, and we saw a couple of weird things happen in that game as well. Between the Islanders and Devils last night, there was also a bad hit from Islanders fourth liner, and I guess you can call him somewhat of a tough guy, Rumours Johnston, who was given an illegal check to the head against Devils forward AJ Greer. He's been suspended for 3 games. If you watch the replay of the hit, it certainly looks like the head is the focal point of the contact, and he goes into the board and glass area. Didn't look good when it was asked after the game. Devils head coach Lindy Ruff said that AJ Greer was doing okay, but not great, and was definitely going to be looking at a longer term recovery. So certainly want to wish him the best, and the 3-game ban for Johnson I think is certainly justified based on the hit to the head. Now, the other big news today is we get some updated news and rumors, I guess, to a degree. Until it's finalized, it's still, you can still kind of classify it as a rumor on where things sit with the Montreal Canadiens general manager search. Now, we've seen reports from a couple of different NHL insiders, including Pierre LeBrun and Elliotte Friedman, talking about this as well. It seems like they're down to 3 to 4 candidates. They've concluded what they would call round one of the interviews, and they're going to be conducting a second round, and there looks like there could even be hiring more than one person. There will only be one general manager, but it's been rumored that multiple people that have interviewed for the GM role may end up being offered other positions. It could be assistant GM, it could be player personnel, it could be different front office positions within the Habs structure there. Certainly, like when Bergevin was let go, Trevor Timmins was let go, Scott Mellanby had left, so there's a variety of openings there. Right now, Jeff Gorton doesn't really have a whole lot of help in the front office like he normally would. There's more than one vacancy, so it'll be interesting to see where things go on that front and who else might be involved here. Out of the 3 to 4 candidates that's remaining, it's believed that the frontline contenders here are Matthew Darche, of course, who currently works in Tampa, Daniel Briere, former Habs player, former colleague of Jeff Gorton as well from his time in New York, and agent Kent Hughes, who of course was mentioned early on as a potential candidate by Elliot Friedman when Gorton made some comments indicating he was kind of, open to thinking outside the box, and there is some connections between those two as well. So it'll be interesting to see who the fourth person might be. We haven't really heard much in a way when it comes to Patrick Waugh. He was indeed interviewed. Of course, he's probably the biggest name that's involved, and certainly the biggest personality. I think that's fair to say. I think it's also fair to say that a lot of people don't really suspect he will be hired, given the fact that he's not going to have as much control as he would like. And certainly, Waugh is not be the easiest to work with, which is obviously why things kind of blew up and he ended up vacating the Avalanche job as head coach abruptly near the end of an offseason. He wanted to have more say in the player personnel changes, and Joe Sakic just gently reminded him that he's not the general manager, he is. And, they kind of had a falling out, and he decided to leave the Avs organization. So it would be surprising to see Waugh in that kind of a structure with Montreal, but obviously if he has desire to work with the Canadiens, he'd have to make a lot of changes and certainly have a different approach for that to be a successful relationship. So I don't think too many of us are expecting it. I know there were some females that were in there as well, and we haven't heard much about them. Could they maybe be one of them be the fourth candidate, or could one of them be one of the people that's rumored to be possibly offered another position within the team? I think all three of the names that we did mention, whether it be Darche, Briere, or Hughes, certainly all bring a very different background and a very different perspective. I mean, Matthew Darche was a bottom six forward, a grinding type of player, certainly worked his way around the league, whereas Daniel Briere certainly had a much longer, more successful career, an offensive player, he was a star player for a period of time for sure. Of course, and he's started working his way through different level management and has worked his way up here over the last number of years as well in a variety of positions, where Ken Hughes comes from the agent business. So certainly very different perspectives. I think they'd all be good for different reasons. I know some are kind of leaning towards Briere maybe being the favorite here, but I don't know if we can really go as far to say that there is a clear-cut favorite, but odds are within the next week there should be a lot more clarity. I don't know for sure that we'll have a decision made and somebody be hired and an announcement made. That could come within a week, but this week all three, and possibly if there's anybody else that was still in the mix that we don't know of, will have their second interviews, and I would imagine they'll kind of narrow things down a little bit further, and probably within a week or two at most, we should have this decision made and have the general manager in place for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, of course, as I mentioned, we have some trade rumors to talk about today as well. And of course, they do involve some players from the Canadiens, including defenseman Ben Chiarot, who apparently is high on the interest list of the Florida Panthers, who are one of the NHL's top teams, and certainly a team that's built extremely well, who would have a good shot at a long playoff run. I know, looking at reports from George Richards, who covers the Panthers closely for Florida Hockey Now, he seems to think, which does make sense, that if they're going to add before the deadline, the most likely scenario, of course, barring injury between now and then, would be on defense. I mean, they do have some pretty good pairings going right now. Of course, Uyghur is solid. You get Ekblad, you get Gudis. Forsling's a nice piece back there, but they could certainly possibly use another experienced player, which would just obviously bump Olli Juolevi down an extra spot as well. Make him probably more of a number 7 guy. Play a little bit less. Of course, you get Brandon Montour there as well. He normally, of course, is playing more with Ekblad. You get Uyghur and Gudis together. And then lately you've had like Forsling and Juolevi. So they could use an upgrade over Juolevi. So Ben Chiarot from Montreal could be that guy. Of course, in the playoffs, you need guys that can be offensive. You need guys that can be physical. You need guys that can be, hard to play against. And certainly Chiarot doesn't really give you a lot in the way of offense, but they don't need to worry about that. They have Aaron Ekblad, they have Montour, and even Uyghur is decent offensively too. Like all three of those guys can move the puck and help on the power play. Chiarot would be a great fit from the other side of it to be that stay-at-home physical defenseman. But will they be willing to pay the price that's been likely going to cost? I mean, it's rumored that a guy like Chiarot could command a first-round pick, or at the very least a second-round pick, and a higher level prospect. I can't help but wonder if the Panthers might try to possibly consider trading Owen Tippett. I know he's kind of fallen out of favor. I believe he's heading down to the minors, or at least been a scratch recently in Florida. The numbers are not quite coming along for him. Last year wasn't phenomenal for him, but it was a bit of a breakthrough where he got a lot more games in. They get a few goals under his belt. But Tippett's certainly the kind of player that almost needs to have that top 6 role, or he's likely not going to thrive because he's more of a pure goal scorer and wasn't always as strong in other aspects of the game, at least when he was younger and junior. So to me, it might be possible. Wouldn't be shocked if they did end up trading him to help get them closer to a Stanley Cup. They're strong enough that if they feel like they can move a piece like that and maybe hold on to their first round pick, I wouldn't be surprised to see them take a shot at that. And I can see Montreal going through more of a rebuilding stage now that would be interested in some younger talent like an Owen Tippett. I'm not saying for sure that would be the trade. I'm just saying that it makes a lot of sense that they might consider that, but the rumored asking price before was going to be a first-round pick, so we'll see what they do. But, of course, the other defenseman that Richards has mentioned here as being potential targets for the Florida Panthers include some other bigger names like Jakob Chychrun, John Klingberg, and even Mark Giordano, who we're going to touch on here with Seattle here in a moment. But all those defensemen would come at a much greater price tag. Klingberg's certainly going to get probably more of a return than Chiarot will, and Chychrun's going to be even more, given the fact that he has term and he's even younger than all the guys mentioned here. Giordano, it's hard to say. He's probably going to command, a pretty high pick or a top young player as well. So, would they want Chiarot, who can give them that little bit of different style that they don't have as much? I mean, Gudis can play that kind of style to a degree, Uyghur can, but if you look at that third pair, you want guys that can play that way. And certainly would be a big difference that Juolevi is not going to give you. As I mentioned as well, the Seattle Kraken are luckily going to be a very busy team near the NHL trade deadline. It's pretty apparent right now that the Kraken are not a playoff team and they're not going to have a successful first season. They did select many pending UFAs in their expansion draft, so they didn't have a lot of long-term commitments, and a lot of these players could be turned to trade bait and help them accumulate some more picks and prospects for the future. Of course, Mark Giordano right at the top of that list. Again, listen to the Flames being discussed on the Jeff Merrick show on Sportsnet Radio, and again, as well as other places too, mentioning the possibility of a return of Giordano to the Calgary Flames. We saw the Flames play a game against the Ottawa Senators last night and not have much life. The energy wasn't there. That Coach Daryl Sutter wasn't happy, and it is believed that they do still have a path to the playoffs, even though they were a top team in the league early on. They've dropped off and are now on the outside looking in, but they can still easily get into a playoff spot if they can get some stuff together here and get playing better. They do have games in hand. Of course, many of the Canadian teams have played fewer games, so they do have that advantage, but it's not going to be an easy task. They have a lot of teams in similar boat in that Pacific Division, so we'll see if the Flames will be a big suitor for Chiarot. But it was mentioned, on the Jeff Merrick show by Eric Francis that even though his agent, Mark Winter, who's been publicly stated recently that he feels that that he feels a Giordano return to the Calgary Flames would be a real possibility. I know Corey Sarich on the Flames broadcast indicated that he felt that Giordano, if he's traded at the deadline, will only want to go to a winner. And if the Flames are not trending in the right direction, then he's not confident that he can be like they can be a cup threat, then he may not want to go back there. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, he could always return as a free agent in the offseason. That's a whole different story, a whole different scenario in that respect. But other members of the Kraken that you can certainly expect to possibly find themselves on the move would include veterans like Marcus Johansson, Calle Järnkrok, Riley Sheahan, even possibly Colin Blackwell. They're all pending unrestricted free agents right now. Not really clear or apparent that any of them really have a long-term future with the Kraken. Of course, they do need to have some veterans around, but they have some other guys that are already under contract, like Eberle and obviously like Brandon Tanev and Wenberg and guys like that, who they can continue to build around and obviously bring in some of their youth that they drafted. Hopefully get a guy like Matty Beniers in the lineup next year and really kind of start building with him. But obviously the expansion draft and all the analytical stuff that they were, reportedly looking at is kind of not gone well. I mean, they have not had a good start to their inaugural season here, and we'll see. So I suspect they will be selling off several players when it gets to the deadline. Let me know your thoughts, everything discussed here today, down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.